Welcome to Global Realist. Today, our podcast, we've got a lot going on in the world. We've got LA riots, part two. We've got developments now with Israel striking Iran. A lot of changes, a lot of tectonic shifts, which doesn't surprise me because we are transitioning from one global model to another one. We're going from the liberal hegemonic global order, and we're transitioning now to or defaulting, more is more proper to say, is back to a multipolar world where the states, the nation states, civilization states are reasserting themselves. You see this in America with Trumpism. You see America worried more about borders, that the global liberal order, as applied to American policy, domestic policy, is being reversed, and very quickly. And so what happens when you have such a reversal of policy, you get people caught in the middle of it all. So you have millions upon millions upon millions of peoples from mostly Mexico who have came over into this country illegally. They were essentially unofficially invited by the powers that be due to reasons that serve their interests. That fit the globalist, borderless, nationless, even peopleless approach to civilization when you have a global world order. They're people just like anybody else, and if you have a better opportunity dangled in front of you, Americans are no different. People all over the world are no different. People will attempt to capitalize to improve their lot in life. So what I see here as tragic is people are, as always, being used as pawns. The same element that is making the most noise about the injustice that's happening to, let's say, the illegal immigrants being rounded up by ICE and being deported back to Mexico. They do this not in sincerity for human concerns. This was always a political tool, a demographic political tool, leveraged by, comes from billionaires behind closed doors setting these policies decades ago. This isn't, an organic grassroots thing where the liberal elite have a heart of gold and ideally want to invite everybody into this country, and they don't believe in things like borders, and they don't believe in things in citizenship. I mean, none of this is actually real. I mean, it's actually kind of ridiculous on its face. You can't function in this society without being part of it legally. This is done all wrong. If you really were truly interested in bettering the lives of millions of people, first you would consult people who live in the country and say, listen, we think this will be beneficial for us in the long run, and in the short term. This will kind of embody our values as Americans, as liberals, and we want to invite millions of people to become Americans with us. But that wasn't what happened. What happened was, Washington and the consensus elite kind of made these decisions behind closed doors and said, we're going to just not enforce the border. We're going to kind of leave it open, and we're not going to apply the legal rule of law for people who are here illegally. They're not going to actually be totally integrated into this society. It's going to kind of be creating a secondary or second-class citizen. They have to do things sort of off the books, and they don't learn the language, so they don't have a real voice. I mean, it's just not good for anybody. When it comes to the populist consensus have spoken, and there's enough people at the very highest levels in power who agree with this shift, that this is a multipolar world we're living in now. We must recalibrate our strategy from the highest level, and that's what's happening. And so who's left in the lurch? The millions of people who were encouraged to come into this country by the former ruling elite, or the former operating system, which was, again, global liberal hegemonic order, borderless, peopleless, nationless, one world order, collapsed. And so now, unfortunately, you have places like, Los Angeles, which is like, a hub for Mexican Americans and also lots of illegal immigrants. And you have ICE now going out and enforcing laws that, decades later, and it's real ugly and it's real messy and it's real, tragic in many ways. If you turn on the TV or you just, I don't know, you go to social media or Twitter, X, whatever, you're always going to see a binary perspective. You're going to always see emotionally charged imagery. You're always going to hear emotionally charged rhetoric. You're always going to be sort of impelled to collapse into one side or the other. You're not allowed to hover above this thing and observe it for what it really is, objectively, holistically, because to do that would be sort of exposing, the system for what it is. It's a realist, existential imperative structural system. It's much easier just to get your population to collapse into an emotional narrative. You just consolidate everybody into these little groups, and once you know where they stand, well, now you can understand, you can profile them, and you can calibrate your strategy accordingly. You can manage it, and people don't really understand that aspect either of so-called democracy in the West. I like to say it's more of a, it's not a grassroots. The people sort of speak up. They elect representatives. The representatives march to Washington to represent their people group. Here we are, a functioning republic where the government is the embodiment of the will of the people. It sounds good. It's idealistic. It just doesn't have a place in this world. It doesn't exist. It's more accurate to say that the corporations, the special interest groups, the NGOs, factors even in the state itself. People like to say the deep state or whatever, the unelected state, the bureaucratic state, the managerial state. They are the ones that hold the influence of official government. The people are sort of informed after the fact, or maybe they're never even informed of some of the the biggest policy shifts. I mean, this is another example of, let's bring in 10, 20, who knows how many millions of illegal immigrants into this country with an open border for over a decade or so. That isn't something that was voted upon, discussed, openly. It was sort of a behind the scenes, sort of a CFR type understanding where all the elites and all the different sectors who are all on the same operating system perspective, that this is going to actually benefit, it's going to benefit us politically. We're going to get the votes through playing and leveraging this identity politics. And we're also going to increase government welfare because, we're going to provide all these services to people coming here who need it. Corporations benefit greatly. Any labor that they couldn't outsource to China, they were now able to hire these illegal immigrants to exploit them, basically, and then hold up the banner of we are champions of all people. We love all people, invite all people here, and give them the opportunity. They're dreamers. And the reality is the corporations are schemers, and they are manipulators, and they control the media. And how do you control the media? Well, you give them money. How do you give them money? You're their sponsor. You pay for advertising. The idea that this was all done because of goodwill is very naive. Since when does any power structure, does any government, does any apparatus of power function on morality? And when do they care about human feelings or human emotions or humanity in general? Humanity is viewed as collateral damage. Pawns. There's nowhere that I can see any example in history where any power structure such as a state or a government or a nation state ever took the concern of humanity when they were designing their policies. It's always existential imperative first. You must secure your power. You survive by any means necessary. And that's what realism is. And that's what global realist is about. Speech is crafted, engineered, almost meticulously sculpted. And psychology, some people call it dark psychology, is employed en masse to the public mind, which the public mind is like silly putty. It's very malleable. This is the nature of power in the modern world. And now instead of just having, Walter Cronkite style news reporting on the television set, you have an entire matrix of communication that reaches us through our phones 24/7. It's pretty constant. And so the new form of propaganda isn't the old school propaganda where it was less refined back in the day than it is now. Now it's much more refined. Now a version of propaganda that some people call new propaganda or neo-propaganda, I guess. But I want to say it's just called new propaganda. And it's basically saying the way that society communicates publicly is always done via propaganda. And so it may sound cynical, but if you really think about it, any organization, it can be a university looking to recruit students. They're going to create a little advertisement or a little video about who they are. That's a form of propaganda. They have an agenda, and the agenda is they want to influence prospective students to admire their university. And it could be any way we speak publicly when there's money involved is a form of propaganda. When there's some sort of utilitarian-based function. We're not here telling truth or expressing genuine feelings here. The same university is not going to be like, well, we actually struggle with graduation rates, and we think that's because whatever. They're not going to be that. They'll say that to themselves behind closed doors and then formulate a plan of how to sort of mask that, or even solve that problem down the road. But they'll never offer that information when you're a prospective student making a decision. So that's what this means with new propaganda. It's just the way that society communicates is propagandic, period. Public relations is another way of looking at it. What we do is deconstruct. We have to navigate that aspect of what I call stagecraft. There's statecraft, and statecraft employs a lot of stagecraft, a lot of public relations, because it has to manage perceptions. Why does it have to manage perceptions? Because you have millions and millions of eyeballs and passive minds out there that you must sort of direct, influence. That's why we have to navigate this. This isn't for everybody. If you just want to pick sides, if you're that type of person where you within 5 minutes you can take something as complex as Russia-Ukraine, and within 5 minutes of some sort of punditry, listening to that, you can collapse into one side or the other, and then that's your position, and then go out there and go out there and hold up a sign or post on your LinkedIn a flag of whichever country you support. If that's who you are, then hey, it is what you are. But if that's something that you are not, or you kind of just want to get above that, then I would say let's focus on structure. Let's focus on the imperatives of what causes states and interest groups to behave the way they do. And that's what we're doing here.